Good choices. Let's talk about them. I was really hoping that high fantasy would be chosen because Cradle just leaves so many opportunities for high fantasy. The name literally is a new idea for this world, right? Like, Cradle equals high fantasy in my mind. This is the start of the world. So, Cradle is going to have an abundance of magical elements in the air, and that's going to lead to the development of gods or entities or primordials, whatever you want to call them. They're above the mortal standard because they exist before mortality exists. In this setting, we can already assume that the world, Cradle, is already a god. The world itself is a god. It hosts life of all kinds, but it's a dormant god. We are living on a dormant entity in this world. That is how all these other things are born, as siblings. Cradle can host life. It can't create it. So, when Cradle is formed, when it's all come together in a giant big bang of high fantasy energy, it has its first daughter. It's not really related, but they're made at the same time. Whereas Cradle can host life, the goddess, who is literally just named Oya, can make life. She's in charge of making it and preserving it. Preserving literally just means that when something dies, it is cataloged and put in what is to be considered this world's heaven. There is one of everything that has ever lived or existed in Oya's heaven. But Oya couldn't exist without their twin, Ao. Ao is the god of death. He exists right next to his sister because, to be frank, there can be no life without death and no death without life. They can never be separated. They're always together. Ao's job is to literally help life function, to keep the gears going, to make sure that his sister can do what she does best, to make room for things to grow. Because death is not an ending, it's a new beginning. Ao helps make spaces for the people who have to pass on, for the creatures that have to pass on, for the magic that has to go away with it. Because Ao doesn't just represent death to living beings, he represents the death of all things, including ideas. For a long time, Ao and Oya lived together in harmony, and they walked around roaming this place, filling it with life. And as they did, they came across 4 biomes of elemental distress existing on Cradle. And every step they took in it further personified the environments to become more solid, more grounded, bringing forth the 4 siblings: water, air, earth, and fire. Beings that exist to personify the elements that magic is all based on. Water being the first personified, as nothing can live without water. Nothing can function without water. Civilizations are based around water, and so the water goddess, who is simply known as Aqua, is born. And Aqua is the mother of civilization. She is the first goddess we see any temples be erected of, as no temple could sustain itself without her. Her younger sister, Embera, actually exists right next to her. They have a, to put it simply, youngest siblings dynamic, even though they're the oldest sibling of their grouping. Embera, she's so sweet and so kind, so passionate, but she can't stop taking things. Fire helps life, yes, they're helping Oya every day, but it also destroys it. So Embera finds herself in this constant state of consumption. You'll see depictions of her as this small little flame or a giant inferno, and each time you can see how people view her affecting the actual goddess itself. Their younger brother, Terran, actually took the longest time to form because he was stubborn. Now, Terran isn't worshipped. Terran is seen as a reincarnation of Cradle itself. Taran kinda is like the angsty, emo brother of his godly siblings, and he's constantly being shown as this thin, the best way to put it is immovable rod. They can't get rid of him. And he constantly puts himself in the situation of being the villain in the stories because of how stubborn he is to change. Whereas their last sibling, the god of air, the entity of air, is actually known as Aer. Aer is non-binary. Aer exists in a constant state of change, and that has led people to see them as fleeting. No one can truly identify what Aer does. All they know is they're worshipped as a god of luck and also as a god of fickleness. These are not the only gods, obviously, because there's 3 gods left. And these 3 gods are called the Star Triplets. The Star Triplets all represent the cosmology of Cradle. The Star Triplets represent dawn, dusk. It's actually better to put it off as morning, evening, and night, to better put simply. But they don't present themselves differently with names. They present themselves differently with a sun, a moon, and an eclipse. These triplets work in tandem to make sure that not only time keeps flowing, but space does too. All of these gods have had children. These children tell those stories to the rest of the world, as these are in the upper echelon of gods. To actually speak directly to them is quite difficult. The easiest one to reach, actually, is death. So, if you like what you've heard here, if you want any more examples on what's going on, this was our cute little world building session today. I'll talk to you guys later.